Let's start with the NFL. You know, another case of politics colliding with entertainment, where more than 200 NFL players decided to protest the national anthem. In some cases, almost an entire team stayed in the locker room. Brian Donahue has the full story.
Yes, the United States has tens of thousands of people suffering from the devastation of multiple hurricanes, a looming nuclear showdown with North Korea, and an opiate epidemic, and the issue that the president and millions of Americans are debating: should NFL players kneel during the national anthem?
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired?
Yes, President Trump's tweets and statements over the past few days imploring NFL owners to fire any player who kneels to protest civil rights issues during the national anthem inspired this past weekend many more players to do just that, to kneel during the anthem. Some didn't even come out for the anthem, and nearly all the rest locked arms to protest what they called President Trump's infringement on their right to free speech. I'm here at Weequahic High School in Newark, where Democratic candidate for governor Phil Murphy appeared with former NBA star Shaquille O'Neal at a pep rally. Afterward, Shaq ignored reporters' questions about the national anthem flap. Shaq, any comment on the national anthem controversy?
No thoughts at all?
Former quarterback Colin Kaepernick kneeled to protest the killings of African Americans at the hands of police. Now Kaepernick became a pariah. He is out of the league. Many people of his supporters, many of them say that is because of the stance he took. But now Trump is badgering the NFL owners who supposedly pushed Kaepernick out of the league for doing the exact opposite, kowtowing to what he calls a lack of patriotism and respect.
I have no idea why he's getting in the middle of that, like a lot of other things. So I take my hat off to the players who stood tall and exercised their First Amendment rights.
This whole controversy, and maybe the only thing we can all agree on here, a sign of just how bitterly divided this country has become on so many issues right now. Reporting for Chasing News, I'm Brian Donahue.
Thank you, Brian. All right, I want to bring in former NFL player Jack Brewer. We talked to Jack a little bit last week. Jack played for the Giants, the Eagles, the Vikings, the Cardinals. Jack, let me cut right to the chase and ask you, as a black man, do these protesters speak for you?
You know, I think this debate needs to happen in this country. And as a black man, obviously, you know, I'm aware and I try to stay out in front of these type of issues. Now, I don't always use the American flag to necessarily as my vehicle for protest. I try to go out in the communities and help kids and talk to them, just like a lot of these NFL players do the same. I mean, these men are community leaders, their fathers, their sons.
I mean, as an NFL player, I mean, you've been around the league. What would you have done given these circumstances? And specifically weigh in on what happened in Pittsburgh, because that got a lot of people's blood boiling. Here was a decorated war veteran who stood alone as his team stayed back in the tunnel. Would you have done that?
This is a sensitive topic, man, and I'll tell you right now. When President Trump called all those men sons of, he changed this entire debate. This debate is not about the military.
This is about Donald Trump?
Yes, of course it is. He disrespected players on another level.
Jack, do you stand or kneel if you're taking the field on Sunday? You.
This last weekend, I probably would have stayed in the locker room. I probably would have put my hand to my heart in the locker room. I don't think that the national anthem needs to be a display. I think people are coming to these games to watch football. I don't think we need to use the anthem in the way that we are. And to be honest with you, no one would even be seeing all of this if it wasn't for as much media coverage as it's getting.
Thank you. Appreciate you weighing in. We'll definitely have you back.
Sir.
Good talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I want to bring in sports reporter George Falkowski. George, how you doing?
Happy to be here.
What you heard the man.
I heard the man.
What do you think?
I come from a generation, you know, my parents were World War II, Great Depression, and through my whole life, sports has always been a place you go to get away from this stuff. Now, the NFL loves to wave the flag. They've got that 100-yard flag out there every week, but they're the same league that tried to fine Victor Cruz and Odell Beckham last year for wearing cleats with 9/11 tribute designs on them because they didn't match the league's uniform policy.
Do me a favor, stick around. I want to bring
Sure.
in our panel. Bob Bianchi, former prosecutor in Morris County. Thanks for being here, Bob. Always good to see you. Dr. Liz Henry. Dr. Liz, great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here. You're a pediatrician and a youth counselor.
Yes.
I'm interested to hear your perspective on this. And Afia Yunus, thank you for being here. You're an attorney. I want to start with you, actually, Afia, because one of the things that didn't come up when I talked to Jack Brewer, and we haven't heard a lot of this, but a lot on Twitter, the NFL has a domestic violence problem that's running rampant through the league. Do you think this is just a distraction?
Just to take it back, I do think it is a distraction, but it's a distraction by the president from the real healthcare bill problem that's happening this week. That's where I think the distraction is. I think he has launched the conversation into something that it initially was not, and turned it into a racial justice issue by 6 NFL players into a us versus them rhetoric, which myself as a Muslim woman is exhausted from.
Dr. Liz, do you agree with that? This is a Trump problem, forgetting the domestic violence? I mean, actually, Afia, you sound a little bit like the NFL. They don't want to talk about it, but they got a problem.
I actually think it's two issues collapsed. You have the issue of President Trump's comments, which were absolutely, I think, ridiculous for a leader of the United States to make, and causing divisiveness and polarizing us as a nation. And then you have the athletes taking a knee to bring attention to the institutional racism which is being ignored. So I think they're two, and now they're collapsed into one.
What do you think? I think the President of the United States, if there's any person that should stand up and say, hey, respect the flag, I actually expect that from the President.
I think this whole thing's a mess, Bill. There are so many conflicting messages that are happening. Is this about police brutality and racism? Is it about an anti-Trump sentiment? It's very, very important, because I've been fighting civil rights violations in minority communities as a civil rights litigator and as the prosecutor. And what concerns me is that people who respect the flag and respect the military and do not see this as a racial issue, they understand police brutality, they understand that these things need to be corrected, but I don't think this message is getting through. People are now getting entrenched, and when I try to have dialogue about civil rights, they don't want to hear it.
You blame the president on this in the tweet, but NFL ratings are down 11%, and that's before this happened. I think you're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't necessarily blame the president. I just feel like he, instead of creating a conversation, which would have been beneficial, he's turned it into conflict. We could have created a conversation about racial justice or police brutality or any number of things that would have been positive for the country, but instead it's turned into this polarized situation of us versus them again.
George, how does the NFL come out of this?
Right now, they're in a world of hurt. I don't think there's any way that they can kind of put the genie back in the bottle right now. There's a lot going on. We saw what the Steelers did yesterday, but they did that in Chicago. If they did that in blue-collar Pittsburgh, it might be different. So I'm interested to see what happens there in their next game and how far this goes.
All right, George, thank you. Guys, got to leave it there.